So for all the talk of the president's change of attitude about the pandemic, more than 145,000 American lives into it, the president's spokesperson now says, change? What change? He's been totally consistent. John Berman here, in for Anderson. There's a lot to get to tonight after a week that saw the 4 millionth confirmed coronavirus infection. We start off with spin that would be comical except to anyone grieving the loss of a loved one. Except to frontline doctors at overburdened hospitals making agonizing decisions about who even gets treated. Except for parents worried and confused about sending their kids to school. Except for millions of laid off workers, another 1.4 million this week about to see their unemployment checks shrink. To them, what you're about to hear must sound far different than spin and closer perhaps to contempt for the reality we're all now facing.
There has been no change. He hasn't changed. In fact, and just speaking on COVID generally, the way I've heard him talk privately in the Oval Office is the way he's talking out here. The only thing that changed is the president taking dozens and dozens and dozens of your questions each and every day because he felt the best way to get information to the American people was for him to be out here answering your questions and providing this directly.
No change, she says. And in fairness, perhaps she's right. Just not how she intended. You can make a case the president has consistently failed to take the pandemic seriously, and the only thing that's changed is he's now saying words out loud from a prepared script at the podium. These words now conveniently and deliberately ignore everything else he's said and done month after month and death after death. For example, here's the president last night talking about canceling the Republican convention in Jacksonville.
We have to be vigilant. We have to be careful. And we also have to set an example. I think setting the example is very important. It's hard for us to say we're going to have a lot of people packed in a room and then other people shouldn't do it. Well, there's nothing more crowded than a convention. I mean, you've seen them. And even though you try and keep people away from each other, it's just not that kind of a thing. They probably can't do that. It just doesn't work for them. So it's very hard. So I think we're setting an example by doing it. It's very important.
The president also said, and I'm quoting here, quote, "I have to protect the American people. That's what I have always done. That is what I will always do. That is what I am about." Mr. President, if that's in fact so, there's someone I'd like you to meet.
I've been watching the fake news for weeks now, and everything is negative. Don't go, don't come, don't do anything. We saved hundreds of thousands of lives. And all we do is get hit on like we're terrible. They test and they test. We got tests and people don't know what's going on. It's a disease, without question, has more names than any disease in history. I can name Kung Flu. We got this. We got another one over here. Many call it a virus, which it is. Many call it a flu. So I said to my people, slow the testing down, please.
The president indoors with thousands of people at a rally in Tulsa, no social distancing, only a few covered faces. That was about 4 weeks and nearly 2 million cases ago. 4 weeks and about 25,000 lost American lives ago. And now the president says that the very same type of event just isn't safe. And his press secretary suggests he has always thought that, even though he moved the convention to Jacksonville in the first place because officials in North Carolina would not permit the kind of no-mask, non-socially distanced event that he was demanding, which he now says just isn't safe, which raises the obvious question.
Why is it not safe to hold a Republican convention, but it is safe to reopen schools?
Yeah, the schools are a different situation when you have children who, as the CDC guidelines clearly note, are not affected in the same way as adults.
Those guidelines, you'll recall, were loosened on orders of the president. We'll talk more about them in a moment, but in a nutshell, they lean strongly toward returning kids to the classroom, even though the science on the safety of it is unclear. Notably, the CDC makes no mention of a large study recently out of South Korea which found that kids ages 10 and up spread the virus just as easily as adults. This morning on the Today Show, Task Force member Dr. Deborah Birx alluded to it even as she admitted that evidence on younger children is thin.
What I can't tell you for sure, despite the South Korea study, is whether children under 10 in the United States don't spread the virus is the same as children over 10. I think that is still an open question that needs to be studied in the United States. We certainly know from other studies that children under 10 do get infected. It's just unclear how rapidly they spread the virus.
It's unclear, she says. The evidence is mixed, say the new CDC guidelines. To sum that up in plain English, yikes. Especially since the loudest voice in the room with no scientific training keeps saying things like this.
But when you look at the statistics I just read having to do with children and safety, they're very impressive. They have very strong immune systems.
But you would understand that the children who go to school, then go back to home, they're with someone live with their grandparents, that there's a real risk. Would you understand if
So
some
they
schools...
do say that they don't transmit very easily, and a lot of people are saying they don't transmit, and we're looking at that. We're studying, John, very hard, that particular subject, that they don't bring it home with them. Now, they don't catch it easily, they don't bring it home easily, and if they do catch it, they get better fast. We're looking at that fact. That is a factor, and we're looking at that very strongly. We'll be reporting about that over
South
the
Korea
next week.
study says true. The president also says the administration is, quote, in the process of developing a strategy that's going to be very, very powerful, unquote, for addressing the pandemic. He said it, by the way, on Tuesday, more than 3,000 lost American lives ago. We should also mention that at no point this week did the president mention the 4 million case milestone or the number of Americans who have died. Perspective now on the public health and political sides of this. Joining us, Dr. Celine Gounder.